And good morning and welcome back to the Ghost and Friends channel. Very special guest in the house today. Mr. Blake Helm is taking some time to join us and talk a little bit about his story. Good morning, Blake. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning. I'm doing great from Greenwood Village, Colorado.
I'm sure it's a little bit cooler up there for you right now, maybe a touch less humidity. So I'm a little bit envious of you.
I had to wear a little hoodie this morning. It was a little chilly throwing the ball to the dogs.
That sounds like some fun golf weather for me.
That's good.
Blake, once again, man, thank you very much for being here. As we talked about a little before we came on live, Gunnar is off to a very hard start this season. So before we kind of talk a little about this season and where Gunnar is at, if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about Gunnar's development through high school and then his recruiting process and kind of how Texas came to be in the picture and ultimately why he ended up choosing the Longhorns.
Yeah, so I think it's a cool story. You know, it's interesting with being an out-of-state kid and his recruitment kind of coming out of COVID, and then obviously the coaching change. He got a little bit lost in the shuffle because people don't know a lot about Gunnar. So when they see his athleticism and what he's doing on the field, it's been kind of a surprise to a lot of people, but it's no surprise to anyone who's watched him in his athletic endeavors throughout his whole life, right? So,
right.
I mean, a lot of people don't know he was a three-sport letterman as a sophomore at Cherry Creek High School, which is 4,000 kids. It's the #1 high school in Colorado. It's the Westlake of Colorado or Denver, and so it's a highly competitive, unbelievable program. So. He was a long stick midi on a state championship lacrosse team at 6'5", 220. He played basketball and obviously football. Growing up, he was always a good athlete, right? I coached him for a long time in Little League and then, turned the reins over to some better coaches than what I was. But, he was always a wide receiver up till about 2 weeks before his junior year. Okay. And they moved him to tight end, which I always thought that's really where he should be. And, 30-something offers later at the end of his junior year, he was a tight end. So I think that kind of blew up a little quick on him. The recruitment process was fascinating. It was fun. He handled it with grace. He handled it with poise. He did, he never blew anybody off. He took all the phone calls. He'd come home from school and have a dozen calls he'd have to make with coaches, and so it was an exciting time. And he was going through it, and he had them all. I mean, he had the Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Wisconsin, a bunch of the Big Ten. And what people don't realize is my dad was a tight end at Iowa, and my wife's father was he played both ways at University of Illinois, got drafted by the Eagles. So, the pedigree is there for Gunnar. And so, we grew up in the big, cheering on the Big Ten, my wife and I, but one of the things that kind of came out during the recruiting process is, where is he going to find lifelong friends? Where is he going to fit the most? And he loved the culture of Texas football. And he probably watched Friday Night Lights 25 times, in high school. He just loved that show. Just loved the culture of Texas football. It's a religion in Texas. And, he didn't have Texas was his last offer. And it was because they had 2 tight ends committed. One ended up going to they both decommitted. One went to SC, one went to Auburn. Yep. And so, Gunnar was their first call. They did that coaching switch with Yursich, if you remember. So they brought in a new tight ends coach.
That's a great comment there. You got to appreciate that Iowa tight end lineage. It runs deep, brother.
Yeah. And Iowa wanted him bad. And, we went out and visited Iowa and Wisconsin and Ohio State and kind of did a Midwest swing. And, you know, but anyway, he loved the whole Texas thing. He got that offer last, and he kind of looked at me and said, "Dad, I need to see Texas." So, you know, it was kind of during that time we couldn't really got robbed of all of his official visits, which was a real
Right.
bummer for him, you know, because of the COVID. So we hopped on a plane, went down there, and he told me he knew flying in, looking at Austin, this was it, right? And I was waiting for the aha moment with him. You know, he had the Alabamas and the Georgia, he had all that, and it was like great. Nothing was like unbelievable, but Texas really kind of raised his eyebrows. And so we came down to the 40 and walked around a little bit. And we went and got some dinner before we flew home. And he said, "This is it." And I said, "Well, you're going to wait 48 hours. And then, you know, if you still feel that way, you can commit. This is your journey. It's not mine."
Right.
It's great for mom and dad. It's an hour and a half flight. It's not going to Baton Rouge or Tuscaloosa, which are a little harder to get to. So it's just worked out great. It's been a phenomenal experience for him. You know, he will say to the media the other day, he fell under a lucky star. I mean, you know, when he said he was going to commit, I said, "I'm going to tell you one thing, that Tom Herman's going to get fired." And he said, "Do you think, Dad?" And I said, "I promise you he's getting fired." And he's like, "I don't care. I want to play at Texas." So he signed, and 2 weeks later they fired Herman. But, you know, they hired Sark, and Sark brought Coach Banks, who offered him at Bama. And, you know, Sark loves the tight end and his offense. And so it really worked out. And, you know, Texas was struggling when he committed. So
Yeah.
he took a big chance on all that. But he stayed true to himself. He stayed engaged and tried to get better every day. And you're seeing kind of what's happening through all that.
Absolutely. And real quick before we get a little further into it, if you don't mind divulging, who extended Gunnar the offer from the University of Texas? Was it Coach Banks?
No, it was because it was.
Oh, it was 2 weeks before. You're right. So I apologize.
Yeah, it was a brand new. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He had come from OU. Jurcich brought him in as the new tight ends coach, and I can't remember his name.
Okay, just curious. Yeah, obviously, man, Gunnar and your family, you know, all handled the recruiting process with extreme class. You know, you talk about a kid that you're saying comes in from a full workload. I'm a sucker for the lacrosse kids that play football as well. Ethan Burke, obviously, you know, the guy, a little Austin homegrown young man, but huge fan of the lacrosse guys. But for Gunnar to come home and to handle every single phone call, I'm sure there's a ton of text messages, you know, the whole works. It says a lot about him. Yeah, it says a lot about how you guys handle yourself as a family, how you've raised Gunnar. Because I can't imagine how chaotic that process is. You're talking about involving all of your Big Ten schools, the elite SEC schools, the elite Big 12 schools at the time. And for you guys to handle it like that, ultimately choosing Texas, you know, and watching it all play out the way it has been a blessing for us fans as well. Obviously, you guys feel, you know, Gunnar's comment says a lot, talking about falling under a shining star. That's very heartwarming for us to hear, man, because he did take a big chance on Texas. You guys took a big chance on Texas. We were always going to continue to root and love and support the university. But at the same time, when other schools are kind of winning some of these recruiting battles over us because of our struggles, you know, it hurts a little bit, but you understand. And so for Gunnar to take that chance, you know, the risk pays off. It is still paying off. It's great to see. Obviously, you referenced Cherry Creek High School up in Inglewood, Colorado. Fantastic school for athletes. And I didn't know Gunnar was, you know, he lettered in 3 sports by the time he was 16. That's very impressive. So you talked a little about Coach Sarkisian. What's Coach Sark like as a coach to Gunnar, but then also when he gets away from the facilities, away from the field, and maybe more of the family environment, like what's he like in that setting?
We love Coach Sark. He's been a blessing, obviously, and everybody's seeing what kind of guy he is, right, and what he's done for the football program and the university. I think one of the things I'm most impressed with Sark is the culture, and everybody talks about it. I mean, he's a phenomenal football coach. We know that. But the culture he has really instilled, and, you know, and Gunnar's talked about it in interviews, but, you know, during fall ball, they do what's called Culture Wednesday, and they get in smaller groups and they become very vulnerable. And Sark always starts it off, and he'll tell his story, and he's very vulnerable with that. And, you know, Gunnar's just been blown away by how deep he's become relationship wise, not only with the coaches, but with other players. because these guys don't hold back, and they'll tell their story and, talk about losing a brother to gun violence or, gang violence or, having a dad in jail or whatever. They tell their life stories, and it's paid dividends for this team because they are close. They love each other. They play for each other, and they play for their coaches. They love their coaches. They respect their coaches. So the culture that Sark's built has been really impressive for me as a dad and, as an ex-athlete. Nothing like Gunnar, but playing on a lot of sports my whole life. It's pretty remarkable what Sark's built, and I think that's the big takeaway for me.
Well, that little insight into everything is greatly appreciated, because us on the outside, we know that there are a lot of positives going on within the program. We know that Sark is doing a lot of things right. I'm a huge fan of the continuity of the coaching staff, the carryover. We do have a random departure here or there. That's life in college football. But it allows those coaches to form those bonds and those relationships, and to develop that trust with a player to become that open. And so, another thing that's heartwarming to hear, I have a huge soft spot for gentlemen and people in general who attack, their failures head on, or they have that second chance and they're going full speed. They're not looking back. They own the past, but they're moving on. And so I've said many times on this channel, I'm absolutely in love with Sarkisian's story because of the incredible bounce back, the resolve that it shows. It takes a lot of awareness as a person for Coach Sark to kind of fall down the way that he did, and then not too far down the line. He's not on top of the college football world, but he's doing pretty darn good in Austin, and he's not too far from it.
Yeah, but, and I think the one thing with coaches, these guys, they coach them hard. They coach them hard, but they love them. And, you can coach a kid hard when the kid knows that you love him and are looking out for their best interests. And that comes through, and they feel that. And so the great players want to be coached hard, right? The average players don't want to be coached very hard, but the elite and great, they want coach me as hard as you can coach me. And he's instilled that. And so, all these guys are 5 stars. They've been the greatest players since 8th grade in their towns. They all need and love that coaching. And you can do that coaching if you're going to build them up to and love them on the other side. So I think he's got a good balance with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You could tell that, he's a player's coach when he needs to be. And then he's also, not to be that guy, but he's a hard ass when he needs to be. And so I can't imagine having to balance, your everyday roster, the transfer portal, all the changes in college football. I think Texas is very, very lucky to have Steve Sarkisian and a lot of other great support staff, at the helm, forming this all together. We've got great families involved. When you look around, and this is not something we kind of talked about as a talking point, so forgive me for kind of going off the wall here, but when you look around and you see other big-time football families, Adrian Wilson's son Santana is committed to Texas. Obviously, Arch Manning's around. These aren't the only ones. That has to feel like, okay, it's not just us. It's not just the state of Texas. Everybody sees what Texas is doing as a whole on the football field, inside the facilities at DKR. Does it make you feel, even more confident, even more better that, you guys found the right spot and that Texas is off to do even bigger and better things than they're currently doing now?
Oh, absolutely. We were pretty close to Arch's recruitment. Arch spent a lot of time with Gunnar during his recruitment, and I got to know Coop really well.
Good.
They came to town, and actually Peyton called me and said, "Hey, Arch is coming to town. Can Gunnar come throw with him?" And this was right after, I think, Gunnar's freshman year after spring ball. He came home to graduate because he went down early, and so we spent 2 days throwing with Arch, and so Cooper and I hung out a lot and got to know each other, and just an awesome family. But all the families, the Taff, Gunnar lives with Michael Taff, and Marshall Landwehr and Cole Lord, and they just have the greatest families, the greatest parents, and we all do a lot together. We travel to the away games together. It's a true family that we've built on our family side, that the coaches have, and the facility and the staff have really, built the way for us to be close. We have a big family tailgate before every game, and it's awesome. And so we all get together and we have some barbecue, And we've all gotten to know each other really well, and we all cheer for each other. And it's hard to replicate that. It's hard to create that, but this staff and the university has really created it. They support this team just unbelievably.
It's beautiful to hear everything about that. I do have to ask you, what's your barbecue order? You're coming down here to Austin. You're getting a little barbecue. Do you have a particular spot you're looking at first? But most importantly, what cuts of meat are you looking at?
Well, you're gonna crack up, but I love barbecue. Out of all the times I've been to Austin, I've never had barbecue in Austin. Never had it.
I'm sure you're pretty busy when you get down here, but it is a little surprising, to be honest.
Yeah, and I joke to everybody, I'm like, I've got to eat barbecue, so I'm hearing good things about all the normal ones. I think this weekend I really want to go to, is it Lambert's downtown? I've heard a lot about that. I don't have time to wait in the lines at Terry Black's and all that, but
Franklin's can't do that. Yes, it's some long waits. I'll make a recommendation, and they're not paying me to say this. I've only been there once, but the Interstellars is it's a little bit on the north side of town or the city, but man, they've got peach tea burnt ends, fantastic, out of this world. Speaking of burnt ends, Gunnar obviously is it's a little bit taken care of in that regard. You talk a little bit about the burnt ends NIL agreement with our tight ends at UT.
Yeah, that's been a really, really cool deal. A couple of UT alum are very, very involved and very, they helped start the Pancake Factory. They started the burn ends before, really in the beginning of all the NIL craziness, and before they started the collective, and they were actually instrumental in the collective as well. But they kind of worked with Cade Brewer's dad back then, and he said, "Hey, we want to just do like a crowdfunding where you can join this thing called the Burn Ends for 20, 30, 50 bucks a month, whatever you want to do. All that money goes to the tight end room." From walk-on to starter, they all get the same amount of money, just helps them out a little bit. And so Cade Brewer's dad helped start that. And, they'll do some podcast, it's part of the Surly Horns, and those guys are just great. And they're really funny.
They are.
So they'll do some post, some boys will get on there and they'll do some post-game analysis and stuff. And they'll do some meet and greets, which is really fun for the fans to just get to hang out with the tight ends and talk to them, get to know them, and they can do that if they're members of the Burn Ends. And it's just been invaluable for the boys, not only the money, but to get to meet the community and get to meet the fans when they do these things, and they really appreciate it and they really value the Burn Ends. And it's stayed separate from they've kept it separate from the Texas One Fund, so it's a really special thing. And if I could plug it for anyone listening. We'd love to have you join the Burn Ends. It's not expensive, but it goes a long way for these kids, and they love it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. If you're listening and you haven't heard of Burn Ends, quick Google search. I'll help you out after this. I'll put a link on the timeline, but it goes a long ways, man. It helps kids out. It helps these families, and like Mr. Helm is saying right here, everybody's getting the same amount. Think about the walk-ons. Think about it's a big help. Long story short, and so anytime you need a plug for that, I'm happy to represent Burn Ends. They've done great things, and it is really cool that they kind of got started right there with the Pancake Factory, and that was before the Texas One Fund, before NIL was fully kind of like legitimized, and they were on top of it. And so it's great to be proactive in that market. There was going to be a lot of things going on within NIL, and they went ahead and got ahead of that race, but. Important for Texas on the 2024 football field, people to be appreciative because of kind of what we've gone through. We've watched a lot of changes from when Sark got there in 2021. Obviously, there's been a steady increase in win total. But talk about kind of Gunnar's development at Texas. Like you said, and I think it's a fair and it's not a big knock. There wasn't a crazy big time reaction. When Gunnar does choose Texas. And then kind of early on through his time, it's not lost in the shuffle, man. It was a pretty talented tight end room. Jatavian was a really, really fantastic player. But then last year, you kind of see you get to see a little bit more of it, a massive touchdown against Oklahoma in an absolutely pivotal spot where we had to have something. The big time touchdown to kind of ice the game up in Ames, Iowa late in the season that kept those Big 12 title hopes alive. So if you don't mind, kind of what's been, your personal thought process as you've watched Gunnar develop, and then if you want to share a little bit of kind of maybe Gunnar's own thoughts during that time.
Yeah, I think going back to when he committed, JT was recruited as an athlete. We had no idea he was a tight end, and so as you can imagine, the recruitment process, you're looking at the programs, you're looking how many tight ends they have on the roster. You're looking at what year they are and kind of where they fit. And so when Gunnar committed to Texas, he was thinking, well, Cade's got one more year and then he's going to bounce and he'll be here, Jared and him. And then Juan Davis came in. And so he was lined up really well with that. And then he gets here and JT decides he wants to be a tight end. And so, JT's a phenomenal athlete and, that was all great. But I think what people don't realize, and it's always a little surprising to me, is Gunnar has played in every single game since he's been there.
Yeah.
He's played in every football game. He never redshirted. He actually, Jared got hurt the first 2 games of Gunnar's freshman year. Gunnar started at Y against Arkansas as an 18-year-old kid and actually did pretty damn good. And he held his own. He's come a long way from there. I'm not saying he was great back then, but he held his own as, second college football game. He's in the most hostile environment you could imagine in Fayetteville. And, and he did a good job. But he's played in every game. And, he was ahead of JT of the sophomore year because JT didn't know how to play tight end. And Gunnar, was at least holding his own and doing that blocking thing. And then as things progressed, JT, they felt like was a better, downfield threat. He's an acrobatic guy, he's an awesome athlete, right? So Gunnar was relegated more to the blocking, and he relished that. He was like, I'm going to get better blocking, and I'll get my chance. And so he kind of stayed the course. And to your point at OU, when JT couldn't run, Gunnar was the man, and you saw what he could do. And so you saw what Gunnar did against OU. I think he had 7 grabs for 67 yards or something and a touchdown.
Yeah.
He can do that all the time. It's just he didn't get the opportunity, right? And that was okay. That was okay. He was perfecting his craft in the blocking game, and that's really the most important thing at the next level, right? I mean, you have to be a 2-way tight end. So Gunnar realized that, and he engaged that I'm going to be the best blocking tight end and the best well-rounded tight end I can be, and I'll get my chance one day. And so, that's his development, and with Coach Banks and the way they've developed him and worked with him, it's just been great. He loves Coach Banks. He loves getting coached hard by Banks. He's a great coach, and so now it's his time, and he's taking advantage and he's maximizing, I think, so far his opportunity, and he knows this is his opportunity, and so it's just been a really cool thing to see, and it's fun for the fans to all of a sudden, who's this Gunnar Helm kid? He came out of nowhere. He's been there. People just, I read on the media, well, he only played special teams. He played in every damn game. So I don't know where these, no one ever noticed him.
And it's my fault. I think I worded that terribly because, he's on the field since he was a freshman, like you're saying, he knew his role as a blocker. And so with Sarkisian's offense and having a Bijan Robinson, a Roshan Johnson, and Xavier Worthy, JT, he came around as that receiving threat. There's not a lot of touches out there. So, you make a great point, and credit to Gunnar for realizing, like, these are all NFL talents around me. If I keep doing my thing, on the field, off the field, obviously behind the scenes, and like you said, he'll get his opportunity. And so, as opportunities have presented themselves, he's fully capitalized. And
I think that's the thing, right? He knows, he understands, and he's been coached. When it's time to take advantage of your opportunities, you have to do that. And I think the development and his prep and what the journey he's been through has led to this. And he's gotten better and better. He wants to get better every week. He's a very driven kid. He wants to win. It's not about accolades for himself. He doesn't toot his own horn, and you'll never hear him toot his own horn. And he's okay in the media. He's comfortable, but he doesn't ever talk about himself. He'd rather show it on the field. And, last year he wasn't part of the leadership council, but he was captain for 2 different games. And so that, I think, says a lot that He wants to lead by example. He's not a big rah-rah guy. But I think he's evolved and he's developed into a leader, but he feels that he's earned it. And he wasn't going to be a leader until he's earned it. He's one of those kids that he's got to earn it, and he doesn't want anything given to him. And so I think for him, the progression, the development is exactly how it should have been, right? I mean, because now he's earned it, and he's going to take advantage of what he's earned. That's how it looks, at least.
Absolutely. I mean, you love to hear it. And, he's obviously progressed a ton as a player himself, became a pretty dang great threat in the passing game. I fully agree with you, Nash, over here. Gunnar will play for a long time on Sundays. Now, it helps a lot that everybody around him, the whole vision of the program, they're all on the same ascend. And so that's only going to put each other on a bigger platform to go succeed. I'll be honest with you, man. The Michigan game, I was a little bit worried. I was just, curious about how our offense looked because, we did lose a ton from last year. And so I was just kind of curious about how it got done. I was very confident that we won that game and could win it handedly because of their offensive situation. But after, I don't know, maybe Gunnar's third catch in that game, I was like, you know what? They don't have a cat that can handle him right here. They're worried about us hitting them in other spots. And he was, obviously he ate their lunch, but when he scores that first touchdown, and you're talking about being on a road in front of 110,000 fans, which it seemed like 25 to 30,000 were us Longhorns. So I appreciate you guys for going up there and being loud and supporting. But he kind of looked into the Michigan crowd, and they're kind of chirping. He kind of chirped back, and to me, it's like all the players around him that are looking, obviously still very early in that game. It's the first score of that game. And for anyone that maybe hadn't kind of settled in with nerves like myself, that was my moment. I was like, you know what? You could tell how confident these guys feel out there. And it's not that he's out here just talking a lot of trash. It's just that he's not scared of that moment. And you could tell how amped he was to be a part of it and to go, prove himself. And so huge game for Gunnar there. We're going to take a look real quick at last week. And I mean, I love the Michigan touchdown.
Great touch pass to his tight end. Helm leaps the defender down to the.
So when you're watching that, is there a little part of you that's like, oh yeah, I was doing that back in my day, or are you giving the Big Ten grandpas more credit?
No, that's not me. It was so funny in high school, as a tight end, they're going to go for your ankles, right? They're not taking you up top. And
right.
In Colorado, it's illegal to hurdle. You can't do it. But every game, he would hurdle someone. And, he wanted to perfect that because he just didn't want to get his knees taken out, right? So he'd get called for a penalty or whatever. Sometimes they wouldn't call it, but he's kind of always done that. And it's just part of, his athleticism and how he plays the game. He'd much rather just try and time it and jump over. If he doesn't time it right, he doesn't time it right. But when it works, and that one worked.
It's definitely fun to see right there. Anytime a hurdle goes on the football field, I'm a fan. Is Gunnar? I saw a comment earlier. I'll see if I can find it. Is Gunnar out there hitting hurdles on the practice field at times?
No, he doesn't practice.
Hey, just naturally got those big ups. So obviously working out a big, being part of a pretty elite strength and conditioning program probably helps a little bit. But yeah, like yourself, my granddad played at Penn State. And so a little Big Ten ties there. And then the wife's granddad played at Ohio State. So we've got almost that whole conference covered. But maybe, I don't know if it's like you, but it skipped a generation for me. So I'm hoping my son picks up some of those same skills. But talking about 2024 Texas team, I'm not going to ask you for your expectations because I think we all know and believe that Texas can go out and win any game that they play in this fall. But if you had to describe the 2024 version of Texas football in one word, this one team, what word would you choose?
I would choose driven. These guys are really driven and they're focused, and you can just tell they're locked in. They've got a lot of cohesiveness. Like I said, that they, at least on the offensive side, these guys have played together for a long time. They played a lot of football together. And then you throw in some of the newer faces. Obviously, the skill positions has been huge. Quinny is so much more comfortable, in my opinion, and he just I mean, if you watch that Michigan game, I went back and looked at it. It was unbelievable. The throws he was making and the decisions and he's calm. And I feel like they kind of feed off of Quinn with that. And these guys are just driven, man. I can speak for Gunnar. You know, all he wants is to win a championship. He doesn't care if he blocks all day. He just wants to win a championship. You know, and let the chips fall where they may. But I would think driven and focused would be I'll give you two words.
I like it. You know, that I've said on the channel, it seems to be a different mindset. So I can see that there, a bit of a mission-led team. And so I think that's the perfect word to use for this team. You can tell that there's something different. You have a lot of selfless characters out there that, you know, you see guys celebrating every touchdown, whether they're involved in the play or not. You know, there's a lot of energy, a lot of passion poured into everything. And it's dang fun to be around the program right now. So great time for you guys. Extremely excited, happy, proud of, you know, everything for Gunnar and for all of you. Thanks for, you know, choosing Texas and, you know, being a part of the whole family and just continuing to, you know, let that light shine through. You can tell it's an A+ family up there. And I forget what part of Colorado you're in now, where you said you were, but you guys are great. And obviously you guys, all the parents and families, you know, you're your own Texas football family. And so we're really blessed as fans and people that care and, you know, report on the program to have you guys involved. And so, yeah, man, tell Gunnar to keep going. Obviously, you know, it don't matter. He's going to keep going because that's what his mission is. And so thank you, Blake, for taking the time to be here today. I would love to have you back. Maybe we can get you back on towards the middle or end of the season, and we can keep on popping some Gunnar hurdles and highlights on the screen for everybody to look at.
Well, happy to do it, Cord. Thanks for having me on. And I want to just especially say thanks to everybody. Thanks to the fans of Texas football and how you support our boys. It's incredible. And it's been an unbelievably good journey. And we got a long way to go this year, and we're going to get it done. But I, you know, thank you on behalf of the Helm family and Gunnar and everybody that plays. The support that they get is just out of this world, and it's very much appreciated. And thank you for everything.
Absolutely. Texas fans, you know, they'd be doing the same to you guys. That means a lot. Anyone watching, you know, continue to support. You know, obviously it means something to these families and these kids. You know, there's times I feel like I'm kind of crazy for the amount of passion and love I have for the University of Texas and obviously the football program. And talking with Blake makes me feel a lot better and more secure about that. So thank you again, Blake.